you are not a fundamentalist anti-capitalist.
No, that's very fundamental to my position, is to say, no, the capitalist economy, free markets, remains the best way we have of organizing economic life. I've got
creating wealth.
And creating wealth. I have two problems with it. One that I've mentioned, that the market does produce negative effects, disturbing, disruptive effects, and you have to be willing to have policies that tackle that. Second problem is that very often in the modern economy, we don't actually have free markets. We have markets dominated by very small numbers of corporations, which then become political favorites and actually destroy one of the main functions of a market economy. So
are the USA still a free economy, a market economy, or are they
it's very much dominated, because these things in all economies, sector by sector, it's very different. There are some sectors, like energy, which almost always are heavily dominated by oligopolies. There are other sectors, sometimes food, not always, where there's much more market competition. The US has serious issues with oligopoly in energy, in finance, and also, surprisingly, in information technology, even though that's a new sector, and in pharmaceuticals and some others.
You say in your new book, Greece is a victim of financial markets. In my experience, Greece is a victim of itself. Greece doesn't produce anything, and they stacked up public employment, financed it with the debts, and now they are broke.
Yeah, I said that in my book too. Greece has a serious problem. There's a problem that most of us have, but Greece has it in an extreme way, and that is it's dominated by an offshore elite. In Greece's case, literally offshore, because it is actually in shipping, but an elite that doesn't really become part of the country, it doesn't pay taxes, and yet it dominates the country. And that has prevented Greece ever developing a modern economy where adequate taxes finance a modern welfare state. And it's very difficult now to see what Greece can do, actually.
Let me go back to the hope of social democracy. It's just a hope, or is there any movement you detect?
There is an extraordinarily lively, critical, radical movement, critical of big corporations, critical of the excesses of capitalism, developing in Europe and the United States and in some other parts of the world. And that movement and social democracy can talk to each other. And it would be not a good thing if democratic parties absorb these new movements completely, because of the attack. Yeah. In the modern society, I don't think the old model of big parties will ever dominate again in people's hearts and minds. But I think relations between parties and the modern new groups and various cause organizations can produce a new life in the center-left.
But isn't there also the possibility that the thing is going in the other direction? Rightist parties and rightist movements are on the upswing all over Europe?
Yes, the xenophobic parties, yes.
Not social democratic movements, but social nationalist movements.
Yes, a really grave danger. And I see the real causes of that, of the fact that people are frightened of globalization, worried about globalization, and they seek solutions that are an escape. But it's not a good idea to have an escape. Countries that isolate themselves from global competition end up with very bad economies. Well, we have to go on with globalization, we have to go on with the global integration of world markets, welcome a lot of movement of peoples around the world, but provide the basic security, social security in people's lives so that they do not feel threatened and they can feel confident about facing these changes. It's true that everywhere in Europe and in the United States there is a new level of xenophobia. But it is at its worst in those countries like in Southern Europe with the weakest welfare states. The countries with the strongest welfare states, although they have problems now with integrating immigrants and dealing with good relationships, nevertheless, they're still doing it better than the ones with weak welfare states.